Jake Paul is turning heads in the boxing scene with a quick win this weekend against Ben Askren. Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Penn State Sports Night. I'm Lexy Leidlein, joined by Sommer Thomas and Zach Gershman. Tonight we will be recapping a much anticipated fight between YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul and world-class retired MMA fighter and wrestler Ben Askren. So Sommer, despite the fight only being about 120 seconds, what are your overall thoughts?
All right, so just to start off, of course you had to say YouTuber turned boxer, but he is still a YouTuber. I'm not willing to call him a full-fledged boxer yet. This is, basically just an overall opinion. Until he gets a legitimate boxer in the ring with him, I can't really consider him a boxer. Now, if you're going to be fighting celebrities that have either never boxed in their life or didn't even train, as you can tell from the way Ben Askren looks right now, not to mention he's a wrestler, he's a grappler, not a boxer. It was just an overall really strange card and a really strange fight. A lot of musical performances, a lot of really mediocre at best fighting, and a less than 2-minute fight that we all got to watch that people paid $50 for. So yeah, those are my thoughts. How about you, Zach?
It was a concert with a boxing match in it, with a boxing fight in it. See, I disagree with you a little bit here. When you put 4 years of your life into something and you ultimately you go through the commission, you go through the training, you go through all that kind of stuff. He's a pro boxer now that has a YouTube channel. He's switched it around. He's definitely dedicated a lot of his life, and all of his family's talked about that. His fans and his supporters have seen that. Honestly, the rest of the world has on full display here. Yes, Ben Askren looked like a fat slob, and that's on me. That's Stephen A. Smith saying that. Shout out Stephen A. But he obviously did not take this as seriously as Jake. Jake took this knowing that he's going to be able to go another step in his career, in his boxing career. Ben Askren won it for the money. You saw that in the beginning. He was saying that from the beginning. And honestly, people should not be surprised to see he was okay after the fight, because he got it. He got the $500,000 check he was looking for just for stepping into the ring. So I guess they're both winners in that regard.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, he's taken some hard hits in his career, some really, really hard hits. Again, I think he's 35, 36. You don't stay in the UFC as long as he has without getting some really, really bad hits. And again, I think there's been some talk that maybe it's affected his brain a little bit and he's had some brain damage, but there's no way to know. He's still pretty young. But yeah, again, he's eaten way, way bigger shots than that, so I'm not surprised that he was okay afterwards.
The fight took place in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, where Paul walked in with a fake robot by his side, included performances by Black Keys, Doja Cat, Justin Bieber, and skits and commentary by Snoop Dogg and Pete Davidson. Despite all that, Paul looks like he knew what he was doing in the ring with little struggle, unlike his opponent. Zach, I'll ask you, how did Paul's performance and technique translate into another win?
I just want to say, if I want to walk into a room with that behind me at all times, that's like the ultimate flex in Jake Paul. It's Jake Paul. Obviously, he's going to do that. When it comes to the technique, first off, to go off of Ben Askren, he's grown up and he grew up as a wrestler. He was a grappler and everything like that. And you were able to see it a little bit through the boxing match when he started grabbing onto Jake and started clinching onto him. He threw one shot that got Jake just a little bit. But besides that, he was never a stand-up boxer, or a stand-up striker, rather. Jake Paul, on the other hand, has a lethal jab, and he was able to use that very effectively, was able to open him up a little bit with a couple body shots, a little left-hand hook to the head that kind of gave Ben Askren, oh my God, we're in a boxing match right now. And then he repeated with another right-hand hook, and that deadly right-hand hook is what put him down on the canvas.
So I've got to give Jake Paul some credit here. He clearly has some heavy hands. He was, really just sitting in the ring. He was patient, striking when he needed to, getting some good effective strikes in, not just throwing punches just because he could. But again, one thing that I'm not sure if you noticed, his hands were down here the entire fight. He clearly was not expecting to get pretty much anything from Askren's end, even though Askren was on the offensive for most of the 2 minutes. He was the one chasing after Paul. But again, Paul was just poised, he was calm. But he's got to work on that defense, because if he goes against a real boxer, he's getting knocked out within a minute.
Yeah, a real boxer would be able to pick apart Jake Paul's game very easily. You mentioned Ben Askren was really chasing after Jake Paul. There was a little bit of the fight, about 5 or 6 seconds, when Askren's literally walking around like this, just kind of extending. And at that point, if Jake Paul had a little bit more of an open mind, that's an easy turnaround knockout there if you were Jake Paul to get Askren, because he's completely wide open. But as you said, he's got to keep his arms up at all times, because a real striker would be able to put Jake down.
Yeah, I agree. I never really saw his hands above his chin. It was pretty rare that I saw that in the 2 minutes. And again, he got Askren right between his hands. His hands were way too spread out. I've seen that type of striking fighting style in the UFC a lot. I don't always really see boxers fight that same exact way. I guess that's what his coach wanted him to do, but again, it didn't really work out for him because he wasn't able to block pretty much any of Jake Paul's shots. I think Jake Paul was around 35% with his strikes, which is pretty decent. I mean, it's only 2 minutes in, so there's not much stats to go off of.
Jake Paul is most known as an extravagant and thrill-seeking YouTuber who leads the group known as Team 10. However, Jake and his brother Logan grew up wrestling all throughout their childhood. Summer, do you think Jake Paul is the real deal and here to stay along with celebrity/YouTuber boxing?
So, do I think he's going to have another fight? Yes, of course. There's no way. There's so much more money for him to make, and there's a lot of UFC fighters and boxers that I know want to fight him. For instance, Dylan Dennis. As soon as he won, I saw in almost every comment section, whether it be on UFC, ESPN, Dylan Dennis saying, "I'm ready, I'm here, I want to fight." And that was on Instagram. I don't know what he said on Twitter, but that's what he said on Instagram. So I think that would be a great opportunity. And I noticed that, based on our previous conversation, you think that the Conor McGregor fight is going to happen. I disagree with you on that. I'm sorry I didn't give you the chance to say it, but I'm already disagreeing with you on it. I don't think Conor McGregor is going to put himself down to that level, despite the money that he'd be able to make, because I think he knows that would sort of degrade his skill as a fighter in general to be facing a YouTuber. But again, I can't say that Paul is exactly the real deal. I'm not fully convinced yet. If he goes against a boxer and he wins, maybe. That's when I'll say, okay, fine, I'll consider him a boxer. Right now, he's just a celebrity that's good at boxing to me, who also has a YouTube channel. Yeah. So what about you? What do you think?
Just getting back to that, I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying, and he's the real deal for the amount of experience that he has, for having the 3-4 years under his belt, training under Milton Supreme, under BJ Flores, training under those guys. I think he's the real deal for the 4 years. Is he the real deal overall? If I compare him to a Floyd Money Mayweather, which is not even going to be in the same sentence, the fact that Logan was even in conversations about fighting Floyd is a completely different conversation. But I think for the experience, Jake is the real deal. When it comes to YouTube boxing and celebrity boxing in general, if it counts, money makes sense, everything like that. It's going to continue happening because now there's a completely new generation of kids watching these fights. They're watching their TikTok stars that are logging in, that are going to be going into the ring to probably just get knocked out and be embarrassed. It's the same thing with Jake Paul, and when Jake Paul fought KSI's brother Deji in the first go around, it was laughable in terms of the skill set. Obviously, that's a completely different Jake Paul now, but in terms of skill set, it was laughable. But in general, with YouTube boxing, it's not ugly. The money's pretty, though.
Yeah, again, like you said, I think that celebrity boxing is probably here to stay, just based off of the amount of money that people have been able to make from it. And it's also pretty entertaining. I will tune in again only if Snoop Dogg is doing color commentating. That's when I'll definitely be tuning in. I didn't buy the pay-per-view myself. Luckily, you're able to find the fight on YouTube because it was only 2 minutes long. So I probably myself would not pay to watch again unless we got Snoop Dogg and Pete Davidson commenting again, because that was gold.
All right, Zach, after fighting another YouTuber, a former NBA basketball player, and now a retired MMA fighter, the question I think everyone wants answered, who will Jake Paul fight next?
Yeah, Summer, you really stole my spotlight there with the money man, Conor McGregor. I think that fight, it's a stretch, and I don't think it might be something that happens next year, maybe not even in 2 years, maybe even longer than that. I think it will definitely happen, though, but it really is dependent on the Dustin Poirier fight, the trilogy fight that he has, simply because I think when it comes to money, you're gonna call Conor McGregor. When we spoke about UFC 257 together, we spoke about how if you want a money fight, you put Conor McGregor in that fight. and that's what Jake Paul wants, and that's what he's going to ultimately get. I think Dana White's also a little bit embarrassed by Ben Askren representing the UFC. But another guy in the UFC that I think would be a great opponent for Jake that could ultimately help his stock rise a little bit, but still legitimate a little bit fighter and boxer would be Tyron Woodley. He was in Ben Askren's corner this past weekend, and he was even talking trash a little bit as Jake was getting his knuckles taped up, and that really rubbed him the wrong way, and he was very vocal about that. So it would not surprise me to see him get in the four corners, get in the ring with Jake Paul.
That's definitely an interesting perspective that I wasn't really expecting to hear. But in terms of Tyron Woodley, I think that if we start to see some more, public trash talking, I would definitely consider that. But again, I really don't think that Jake Paul would stand a chance against Tyron Woodley.
I agree.
He is an amazing kickboxer, amazing at Muay Thai. I really don't think that he would stand a chance. But I really do think that there's a chance that Dylan Dennis may be willing to take the fight now. Obviously, like you said before, he sort of, chickened out in the beginning. But I think after seeing Askren fall the way he did and probably watching, Paul fight against a UFC fighter, he was probably thinking like, hey, I'm a lot better at striking than this guy is. This guy did embarrass the UFC. So why don't I go out there and, give the UFC a little bit of a better reputation? And Dana White put $1 million on Ben Askren, and he lost. And he was very public about, being a little bit embarrassed and not really expecting that outcome. So I think that the UFC really needs to, put some better fighters out there to consider for Jake Paul, just because I think that would also be a really big stage for that younger age group. Like you said, the younger viewers that may know who Jake Paul is from TikTok or YouTube that maybe tune into his fights, and they might not know too much about the UFC yet. So that would actually be sort of a really good, marketing ploy. Mm-hmm. But I think it's a bit of a tough sell to say that he's going to be fighting Conor McGregor anytime soon. I would expect Conor McGregor to be well retired by that point. If he loses the Poirier fight, maybe. If he wins the Poirier fight, absolutely no chance.
I agree with that. In the case that he does fight Dylan Dennis, which I don't really think, he comments on everybody that has a blue check next to their name. You see Dylan Dennis in your comments. It's what happens. But Dylan Dennis is really close with Conor McGregor. They're sparring partners together. They work out in the same gym and under the same coaching staff and everything like that. So if Jake Paul does get in the ring with Dylan Dennis and destroys him or knocks him out or does whatever, or does the light work that he did to Ben Askren, then it'd be even more likely to see Conor get in the ring with Jake.
Celebrities and YouTubers calling out fighters and vice versa seems to be a new trend, and it will be interesting to see who is next. That's all we have on this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We will be sure to keep you up to date on all the celebrity/YouTuber fighting action. For Sommer Thomas and Zach Gershman, I'm Lexy Leidlein. Thank you for watching and have a great night. Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.